Unparalleled Studios. Foster Care Nation, listen up. This is
Foster Care and Unparalleled Journey.
strength for the powerless, courage for the fearful, hope and healing for wounded hearts. Hello and welcome back to Foster Care, an unparalleled journey with Jason and not Amanda today. She had important stuff to take care of again, and so I am left here doing the super hard work of sitting down and talking to people while she does all that easy stuff like take care of kids and all that other stuff, you know. So I'll just have to suffer through all the hard work that she's making me do today and sit here and talk with a guest today. We have for you a young man by the name of Darius Kimberling.
Hey. All right.
Hey Darius, how you doing today, man?
Hey Jason, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well out here chasing, like I said, this hard work of doing the stuff that dad does when mom's not home and the kids are all gone. Don't tell her it's not really hard work.
Well, I'm glad I get to be on your podcast today and get to chat with you a little bit. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Hey
man, we're glad to have you here. So tell us a little bit about what your connection with foster care is, how you became involved.
Okay. Well, my involvement with foster care right now is I'm a foster parent. Me and my wife have been fostering for about 4 or 5 years now. And one of the reasons that we decided to do foster care was because I grew up actually in the foster care system. When I was about 4 years old, I was put into care by my mother, and I ended up being in a foster care in Lubbock, Texas, and I was in foster care for about 5 or 6 months there. And I figured out the system and kind of figured out that if I misbehave and acted like some of the guys that I had seen in my mother's life growing up as a young kid, that I wouldn't last long in that foster home. So after about 6 months, I ended up moving back in with my mom, and she had me for about 2 months, and then eventually I was back into care and ended up spending 13 years with my permanent foster parents. And I actually aged out foster care in 2008. So altogether, I've been in foster care for 26 years.
Man, you don't find many people who have a career that lasts that long these days. You've been attached to it for that long?
Yes, sir. Yep. Yeah. It was definitely a journey for sure. It was tough, but I'm definitely grateful for that. And I am grateful now. Maybe not during the time that I was in it, but for sure now, and also for being a foster parent. And I probably wouldn't have been a foster parent if I hadn't been in it myself. So it's been a journey.
Yeah, well, it's great to see that, you know, somebody who has been through a hard thing has come out the other side and decided to go and make it a little bit better and work on it yourself, because so many of us can sit down and talk about why this system is wrong, why the political system we're working with is just wrong, and or the religious institutes are doing it wrong, or foster care is doing it wrong, and we can all sit around and preach about how there's a better way, but not many of us are willing to get up and do it.
Right. And you know, I think a lot of it after I aged out and ended up deciding to be a foster parent, you know, I learned a lot about myself through the training, and also I was upset with my foster parents because I didn't know what they were going through. The rule, they've got a bunch of rules and all this stuff. I didn't know. So as I was taking my foster care training to be a foster parent, I actually uh, understood my foster parents, and it helped me come to forgive some of the things that they had to do in order to keep me in their family. So it was kind of closure for me going through that. So I, I think that it definitely grew me as a person, you know, to accept some of the stuff that I had gone through.
Oh yeah, because a lot of folks don't realize those rules, and I've had some kids who got mad about this, that, or the other thing, and they forget sometimes that not only they're just a crap ton of rules, but those rules change by the day. Sometimes it seems, so we don't always know what those rules are, and we don't oftentimes know how to explain that to kids. That like this really is a rule that I have to follow, not a rule like you have in class when you're in school. This is a rule like a judge is enforcing, and I'm not about to mess with that guy.
Right, yeah, and it's understandable. I mean, and I've got a great respect for my foster parents and for foster parents that do it.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of work that we don't always realize what we're staring at. We don't always know exactly what's coming at us, and we recently there was a big rule change. I think it's called the Prudent parenting rules, which actually made life a lot easier for us. Meaning that, well, for a lot of things, I can take a kid and do it if it's the sort of thing that I would do with my kid. Now, I think sometimes like a minor haircut, I can't take a little girl with hair down, halfway down her back and shave her head bald. But if she needs a split ends trimmed, it's not a big deal if we do that. If I want the kids to go stay the night with my family member or something, they can stay with somebody that's approved. That's not a sex offense, like all that common sense stuff, right? You wouldn't want to send your kids with that, and that's kind of the way that they run those rules now. It makes it way easier than it used to be, but with all those rules changes, it gets difficult to follow that a lot of times, and kids just don't get it because when you're a kid, when you want what you want, right?
Exactly. And I remember I was probably 14, 15 years old, and I wasn't old enough to stay home by myself. So I had a 16, 17-year-old person babysitting me, you know what I mean? And this is back in the day. I know things have changed a lot, but I never understood that, and it's about safety of the kids and all that. And I'm glad the rules have kind of changed a little bit in that department, but yeah, the rules have changed a lot and for the better.
It's a little bit scary to think that a 16 or 17-year-old would be legally allowed to watch a 15-year-old, because I don't know about you, but when I was 17, I wasn't much smarter than I was at 15.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So,
no offense to any of my 17-year-old friends out there, but yeah, I was a dumb 17-year-old.
Weren't we all, huh?
I didn't know it till many years later, but yes, indeed. Yes, I was. The fact that I survived that era of my life is just a testament to God's grace, I think.
Right.
Well, man, I know, kind of like I got off into some hobbies and some stuff, making some stuff, just as a way to fulfill some of that desire to go do stuff and make something, and a way to just fill my time with something that filled my soul a while back. And that took me off into metalwork and hammering on stuff, and ended up in a TV show and all kinds of cool stuff. And it was just a lot of amazing stuff that came out of chasing some of my own creativity and some of my own dreams. And I know that you aren't necessarily so much of a metal worker, but you got off into the woodworking hobby, didn't you?
Yes, sir. I started a company in 2017. It's called Out of the Woods. And at the beginning, I was making closing gifts for my wife. She was a realtor, and whenever she'd close on a house, I'd make gifts for her. And it was fun. It was fun, but it didn't fulfill my passion of ever since I was a young kid, I remember thinking to myself, man, I wish that there was somebody that had been through what I've been through, and somebody I could talk to about it. And I know now it's a little different, but back when I was in care, I thought I was the only kid on the planet Earth that was in foster care. Now you can get online and watch YouTube videos and all that stuff. But back in the day, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was alone. I grew up in a small town, 3 or 4 small towns. So and I felt like I just didn't fit in. You know, I did not fit in. And so, anyways, I after we got into the foster care and we got our first kid, I was trying to figure out a way, because when he first came, a lot of trauma. He was scared, didn't know how to express himself, and a lot of these kids, and for me, a way to express myself was to yell, to scream, and most of the time I would just close myself in. I wouldn't talk, wouldn't express myself. And one way that I growing up that I found a way to express myself was through artwork. I love to paint, draw, artwork, and also basketball. I love to play basketball. If I was having a bad day or something, I would go outside and shoot baskets. I'd spend hours outside shooting baskets. So basketball and art are two ways that I how do you say it, cope. That was 2 of my coping skills growing up. So after going back to my son, I was trying to figure out how he could cope. And one way I found that out was I made him a mini wooden basketball goal. And me and him sat down and we painted it. I let him design it. And granted, he was 3 years old, or 3.5 years old. I asked my son, I said, how who's your favorite basketball player? And he said, Dad, Michael Jordan. And, I'm thinking, how do you even know Michael Jordan, And he said he would watch TV and watch old film on Michael Jordan. I was coaching a basketball team at the time. And anyways, he said, I want Michael Jordan here. I want your logo here. I want my name across here. But basically designed the whole deal, got real creative with it. And we sat down and me and him just started painting. And as he was painting, he started opening up about things from his past. And granted, he was 3.5 years old, but I learned so much from him during that time that we sat down and got creative. And there's something about painting, for me at least, I'm relaxed. I feel like I can open up a little bit. So anyways, I after we got done with that, there was so much joy in my heart, and I know there was so much joy in my son's heart for being creative. And when you start something and you finish it, and there's a joy about seeing the finished product. After me and him made that backboard, we posted it online, and I've had several orders. And fast forward to now, about 6 months ago, I partnered with Amarillo Angels, which is a local nonprofit. Well, they're national. It's a national organization. There's a chapter here in Amarillo, but I partnered with them, and we had a sign up sheet for kids to come in and make backboards, and what I do is I'll sit with the foster parents. We'll talk to the foster parents, and then after I'll sit with the kids and we'll design a backboard. I've got a laser that I use to engrave the backboards, and just give them an outlet where they can sit with me, someone they trust, and someone that's been through it, and I try to encourage them and kind of help guide them as they grow up, and after they go home, let's say that they go home, they can take their backboards with them and can remember the time that was spent on that backboard, and it gives them something to take home also if they go back home to their biological parents. We had a sign up sheet, and 46 kids just here in Amarillo signed up to do the program. And everything's paid for, and they don't have to spend a dime. It'll just be an experience for them, and it's something that I wish I could have had when I was growing up. Like I said, I thought I was the only one that was in foster care, you know.
Well, that's what I was wondering. You take those 46 kids all showed up together, right?
Well, we had an event, back to school event that the Amarillo Angels have every year. They service the foster families here in Amarillo and give them school supplies and stuff. And I had a booth set up, and the kids, and I brought several of my backboards up there, and the kids came up, we shot. They don't want to be, they're not in the position that they exactly want to be in, you know. And you know, once we started playing, their confidence was built up while we were playing. I was playing horse with one kid, and at the end of it, he was flexing on me, and you know, you could tell he was enjoying himself. And I'm hoping that's what the backboards will bring to these kids, you know.
Well, if you want to boost your confidence, you need a guy like me there, because I suck at basketball.
Hey, that's hard. Well, I'm telling you, man, these rims are hard to make it on too. It's hard. It takes a lot of practice.
And I suck at a standard one, so I'd be in all kinds of trouble. But I've learned one thing in life. I'm okay with messing up. I don't care if kids watch me or not. It gives them something to laugh about.
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay, citizens of Foster Care Nation, we want to hear from you. We want to hear any stories that you'd like to share with us, anything that might be funny, inspiring, touching, heartfelt, all of those things. That's what people love to hear. So why don't you send us some of your stories? You can reach us at our voicemail line at 413-FOSTER-3. Again, that's 413-FOSTER-3. Now, we're going to assume that if there's any privacy rules that you need to follow, you've already followed them and changed any names that need to be changed, because we will play some of this on the air. We look forward to hearing from you. Now, this voicemail has a limit of about, I think, 10 or 15 minutes, so anything longer than that, just contact me at jason@fostercarenation.com, and we can sit down and talk about your whole story. Yeah, it turns out that they feel that connection. And, you know, and you talked about, you know, having that experience with your own son, right? And that's an important thing for a kid to be able to have those connections, because as it turns out, I learned something from my children. I learned a lot of things from my children. One of the most important lessons I've learned is at a very young age, you can kind of control them. You know, you can reach down and pick them up and go, "You're going this way." You know, you don't have to ask their permission to do a whole lot. You control a whole lot of their life. Well, you think you do anyways. If you have a crafty enough 2-year-old, you don't control as much as you think you do. But, you know, that's pretty quick that control runs out. And what you're left with, the only thing you're left with for the next dozen or more years is influence. And it's your ability to influence that life that really starts to matter. It's the only thing that you have in that world for those kids is your influence. And I can only imagine that you really are building those opportunities to influence lives in a way that will change how they choose to behave, as opposed to just trying to control every decision they make.
Right. And that's I'm glad you talked about the choices, and that's one thing about art for me, is because I can draw there's no control in what I draw. It's my decision, and I feel like with some of these kids, they feel like they don't have control in their life, you know, and artwork gives them a little bit of control, you know. And with the choices too. I do this with my son. When it's time to go to bed, he'd get upset with me, let me stay up 30 more minutes or whatever. I said, if you make the ball in the backboard, I said, you can stay up 30 minutes later. And he had the choice. He was going to shoot, and he'd shoot, he'd miss. He'd have to go to bed. Well, the choice was his. He's not mad at me. We're all good. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of I wouldn't say discipline tool, but it does. It helps with giving him control to make his own decisions. You know what I mean?
I just have to ask, do you have a special bedtime basket that maybe has a slightly undersized bed?
I put the rubber rim on there for him. No, it's hard. It's hard to make. But after I told him that, the next day he was up early practicing for that shot that night.
Yeah, but he doesn't know as a dad, you figured all that stuff out. And tonight we're just going to tell you got to go to bed 30 minutes early. So when you get the 30 minutes extra, we're still about the same time, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
if this is 20 years from now and one of my kids happens to stumble across this recording, we do that kind of stuff as dads.
Yep.
And 20 years from now, you should too.
Exactly. Yep. Well, hopefully they'll still have the backboard that they made, and they could share it with their kids. Like I said, these backboards, they last a lifetime. They're heavy duty, made out of plywood, metal rims, everything. So I'm hoping that they'll keep these for a lifetime.
I've seen your Facebook page where I've seen a lot some pictures of what you're making, and it does definitely look different than the one backboard that hangs off of the door in our living room that's made out of, I don't know, a 1/4-inch plastic with cheap plastic hooks that go over the top of the door that right now I think one of them is broken, so it hangs at about a 30-degree angle. And they still throw things to try and throw balls in it, I think, just to annoy me with the sound of banging off the wall. But yeah, that's not what you're talking about here. You're talking about something that's going to last, and they look good.
Yes, sir. Yep. And they're designed by the kids, and I'll give the foster parents an opportunity on the back of the board to write a little message or whatever that something, a quote or something that's close to their heart that they want for their kids to have in their heart forever also. And I'll engrave that in the back of the backboards too. So.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. And like I said before, I love this idea that you saw something that you thought needed to be changed. You saw a place where you could step in that matched with your skill set and your drive and your desire, and you went ahead and said, "Yeah, hey, let's go do a thing and actually make some change in lives."
Right. Well, it may not matter now, but I guarantee in 5-10 years we'll see it in some of these kids how it could change them, like you said. Yes, sir.
Now, if I remember right, you grew up without a steady father. I'll rephrase that to get it right. You grew up without your biological father as a steady father figure in your home, right?
Yes, sir. Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. So that everybody I talk to, man, that father wound tends to run super deep. I'm reading a book now that was recommended to me by a psychologist, and it's what is it? It's called From Wild Man to Wise Man. And there's an entire section of this book that's devoted to what he labels as father hunger and the father wound, right? Wanting to have a father, wanting to have that dad who steps into your life. And so many times you don't need to be in foster care or something like that for a lot of these guys, men who have grown up without that father figure in their life, and they're struggling for that. Or maybe you did have a father figure in your life who wasn't such an awesome guy, right? Not a good human. Maybe did not have that right example in his life, had his own levels of trauma that was never dealt with. And we're always dealing with some of those things. And again, I've said this before and I will say it again. I am not mad at my dad. I had a great relationship with my dad, but there were a few things that he was kind of a bonehead on. And my kids will say the same thing. We all have some of that stuff, and so we have to work through that as adults. And you're giving this opportunity to these kids to find somebody who may not be, hopefully you're not all of their biological fathers, or you got a lot of child support to pay. But you have that, you have this opportunity to fill that role.
Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
You can kind of fill some of that father hunger that they feel today, and help them to begin to heal some of that wound that they've had. That I know that you've had yourself. As was that a driving force for you, knowing that you didn't have that exact same thing in your life, or was that part of your decision to really reach out and become a foster father yourself, and help with some other foster kids?
Yeah. It actually was one of the main driving forces for me. I remember just wondering who my dad was growing up, and I remember I even lived in a fantasy world in my head where Michael Jordan was actually my dad, and I used to tell myself that. It was definitely an issue for me. And one thing too was I always told myself I'm not going to be the dad that my dad was. I think that's what pushed me to want to help these kids and be there for them. I mean, show them how to grow up and be a man or woman that they can be. You look at the statistics for foster kids that become homeless after they age out. It's overwhelming. It hurts to see that, and if there's anything that I can do to help, I want to do it. I've got a lot of love for these kids. They're my people. I see myself in them whenever I look at them.
Yeah, and they have that opportunity to hear your story and be able to build that connection with you, and see that you have gone from the young boneheaded kid who was making dumb decisions, much like they're tempted to do at that age, because it's just part of who we are. I'm not mad at kids or foster kids or teenagers in general. At least most days I'm not mad at teenagers in general. But we were all boneheaded teenagers at some point or another. But to see somebody who looks like them, who sounds like them, who understands what they're going through, because most kids think, man, you don't know what I'm going through. And most of the time we don't. I try to always remember that as we talk to kids about stuff. I can tell somebody, man, I know what you're going through. And viscerally, I do not. Intellectually, I might think I do. Like, I know there's this thing, like your body's going through all this change. So your hormones are out of the park right now. They're out to play. And so you don't even know how to control yourself emotionally, let alone all the hormonal raging stuff going on inside of you. Yeah, I know, like, scientifically, that's what's happening in your body, in your head right now. I know that you might be away from your family. I know that that's going to be hard. I know that you dealt with some stuff and you don't trust people. I know all those parts and pieces, but I don't know what it's like to be in your skin.
And yeah, you hit on a good point there. The trust. I think, and that was one growing up for me. That's one reason why I wouldn't open myself up, is because I didn't trust people. I remember doing something that I knew wasn't right, or I would make a mistake, and I would hear people say, it's because he was a foster kid. You know what I mean? He's acting out because he's in foster care. You know what I mean? And at that point, I wouldn't even trust myself. I didn't know why I was acting like this, and I for sure thought that there wasn't anybody else that knew. And if I would have had somebody that I knew and trusted, I would have been a lot more open. And I'm gonna be honest, I whenever I met my wife, we've been married for 8 years. I didn't tell her I was in foster care it took me about 6 months to a year before I would even tell her. And a lot of it was because I didn't want her to feel bad for me for being a foster care. I was ashamed of it. And I didn't want that to be a reason that she was with me. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The one word in there that makes even the craziest thing in the world make sense is that word shame, right?
Yeah. And, I didn't want her to think that since I was I thought she may leave me since I was in foster care, just like my mom did, and then my first foster parents. Like I said, I felt like if I invested my whole self in her, there was a chance that she could leave.
So I have to ask, where is it along the line that you figured out that you had some value and worth that didn't involve like defining yourself as a foster kid, that meant that Darius Kimberling is a good dude and that's just who he is, and it has nothing to do with all those little external labels that everybody's put on you for your entire lifetime. Where were you? What was it? What's the catalyst to make you say, "Hey, I have some value. I'm worth something. I can make a difference in this world"?
Right, right. Yeah. It was later in life. I was probably about 20, 22 years old. And that's actually when I did meet my wife. I made a lot of bonehead mistakes in the beginning of our relationship, and she never left. Okay. So at that point, when I knew that she was invested in me, that's when my mind switched over to, I'm not a foster kid anymore. I am a boyfriend, later to become a fiance, later to become a husband. And that was my role. Okay. So once I got that role, I felt like I had developed into the person that I wanted to be, which was a great husband to my wife. And then down the road after that, it was to be a great dad for my son also. And I think that's kind of, I say this all the time to my wife. I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for your love and for your acceptance. So I think that's kind of where it turned for me. And then once I got my career, my focus was on my career and how to be successful in my career also. So. There's several things when I meet with these kids, the kids that I meet with for the backboards. There's 5 things that I kind of like to give them some encouragement and some guidance on, and some focus on these 5 things. I wouldn't mind talking about them with you if that's all right with you.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
The first thing that I like to tell the kids is obviously you're not alone. A lot of people, a lot of kids that are in your same situation. So I don't want them to feel like they're alone. Like I said, growing up, I thought I was the only one that was in foster care, and it was lonely. A lot of my childhood, even though I had friends, I wore a mask. To hide the fact that I was in foster care. I remember when I aged out of foster care, actually, and I ended up going to college, my foster parents helped me move into my apartment. Okay. And I had a couple guys over there, my roommates, and they asked me, they said, who are those people that helped you move your stuff in? Okay. And I told him, I said, well, it was a pastor from my church. And a lot of it had to do with that I was ashamed, and I thought I was alone in that situation. I didn't want them to know. So I carried that all the way up until recently, that I'm beginning to share my story. And, so I held that in. I wasn't lying though. My foster dad was a pastor, so I wasn't lying, but I wasn't being truthful for me and truthful to myself and to them. Also, you can ask any of my friends at college, and 100% of them don't even know that I was in care. So it's not, and I want them to know it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not your fault. That's the main thing. My mom, she put me in care voluntarily, which is very rare for a mother to put their kids in voluntarily. And I held a grudge against my mom. I held that against her for a very long time, until actually I got my redacted paperwork from being in foster care. That's when I realized that it was the best decision my mom could have made for me and my siblings. It was the best decision she could have made. It was the most selfish decision she could have. And now I respect her for that. It was being in care, and some of the things that my mother was doing was generational behavior. And, I was so mad at my mom for that for a very long time,
Yeah. So do you have a quick rundown of the list of 5 things?
Yes. Okay. You're not alone. And one thing for me was focus on Christ. If you're led to that, the Lord Jesus Christ, he have a father, and I ended up turning to Jesus as my father, and how to behave, and some of my characteristics. I try to follow what's written in the Bible. I think that's important. Give them something to believe in, and that hope that comes with it. Another thing also is to start building relationships with people. That was one thing that I struggled with, was building relationships. A lot of it was I didn't trust people. And I really want to encourage kids to be themselves, and start early, building relationships with their foster parents. Like when we had the Emerald Angels come to our house, a lot of our foster kids, they would talk with them and open up. So basically opening up to build relationships with people. I think that's very important for them. It's important for me, and even to this day, I try to build as many relationships as I can. And then another one also is try to forgive. Forgiveness is important. I think it's to forgive. It's for yourself, even though your parents, their biological parents may not have done the right things, but you never know the situation that they were in. So I would just ask them to forgive as often as they can. And another one is to trust your foster parents, because they put in a lot of work. There's a lot that's involved. That with being a foster parent. I feel that's important to build a strong relationship, and parents too, to build a relationship with the kids also. Whenever growing up, I remember I would, if I did something wrong, I thought it was the end of the world. I thought I was going to get sent somewhere else. You know what I mean? And I always tell, if my son does something wrong, I'll say, hey, we all make mistakes. And I'll even give him an example of a mistake that I made that day, to let him know that mistakes happen. Everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes. You make mistakes. You're gonna make mistakes the rest of your life, and kind of let the kids get to know you in a personal level. And I think they'll open up a little bit more to you also. And another thing too. The last thing that I like to talk to the kids about is to find someone that's successful in whatever career or anything they want to be in, and follow them and get some guidance from them also. The boss that I work for now, whenever I started working there, I didn't have confidence in what I was doing, and he actually trained me, and he's very successful, and he's taught me what it takes to be successful. Hard work is one of them, and so that's the things that I kind of like to talk to the kids about. Just give them hope and encouragement.
Yeah, I could probably go on for about a half an hour on each one of those.
Yeah.
Owning those mistakes, right, and being okay with that. You said everybody's going to make a mistake, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I'm pretty certain. The only people I know who ain't made any mistakes yet today, well, they're dead.
Yeah,
that's the only way you're going to make it through without making some mistakes, man. You can't get through without that. The power of those relationships and building relationships. I mean, whether you know it or not, we're all doing it to some extent. I think it's Jim Rohn who said you are the average of the 5 people that are your closest relationships, and that's going to tell you who you're going to be. You don't get to choose that unless you choose the people that you build those relationships with, and actually build healthy ones. Because
healthy ones, exactly.
The unhealthy relationships are easy to build. It's usually those folks that are going to lead you down the wrong path. And the biggest one, though, is that forgive piece. What does that mean for you when you talk about forgiving? What does that mean in your life to actually forgive somebody?
For me, it makes things right. I feel like forgiveness makes things right for yourself and for the other person. Like I said, I had this deep hurt that my mom had caused me, and it wouldn't allow me to be the person that I wanted to be. It wouldn't allow me to build a relationship because I thought that I was going to end up getting hurt. And once I forgave my mom and my foster families my foster parents for things that they did that they had to do, and going through the training, I figured out was what they had to do. And I forgave them. I forgave my mom. It just gives me peace of mind. That's the main thing. Even if it's not for the other person, for yourself, you've got to forgive people. You can't hold grudges. It'll cloud your brain. It'll cloud everything you do. I feel like.
Oh yeah. That's learning how to forgive people it took me a long time because people always use that phrase, forgive and forget, and I finally figured out that I was supposed to draw a line through part of that. Forgive doesn't mean forget. When I was a teenager, I worked with a guy who was, I think he had an addiction issue, and I didn't know it at the time, and I had loaned the guy $200, and back in the late '90s, $200 was a substantial amount of money, especially for a kid in high school. And I'm just going to say I'm waiting for him to come back into town because that $200 I sent him so he could get a bus fare and get home, he never came back. And I'm going to tell you, if he showed back up, I'm certain, by now in life I have forget how to forgive him. I don't expect him to pay that back at all anytime soon or ever. But I'm not going to forget that lesson. The next guy who's out of town somewhere and calls me all sounding half crazy looking for money to try and get home, especially if it's the same dude, I'm not going to forget what happened. I'm going to remember, oh yeah, wait a second. You probably shouldn't loan money that you can't afford to lose to somebody who's, a drug addict and in a bad spot, because forget doesn't mean forgive. You remember the lessons you learned, but you don't hold on to expecting them to pay that debt. And that's what forgiveness has always meant to me. I don't expect him to pay me back ever. He taught me a lesson that was probably worth that $200 back in the 90s because well, that saved me a lot of trouble over the years. I learned that lesson.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, you said you have a list of things you'd like to talk with the foster parents about as well at these events.
Yes, sir. Yep. Some of the things that I wished my foster parents would have done a little different. Get to know your kids. I know, I know for some foster parents, it's hard because you never know if they're going to be there or not. It's tough. I remember when we got into the foster care, doing foster care ourselves, me and my wife. I remember one of the family members said it's just going to be so hard to allow myself to be open with them, knowing that they could be gone. Not only, I think the main reason was because it would hurt them worse seeing that kid go away, seeing them. And I think it would hurt them more than it would if they got to know the kid. You see what I mean? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I encourage the parents to get to know their kids. Ask them questions. Let them get to know you. Tell them some stuff about your past, stuff like that. Sit down and really communicate with your kids. I think that's so important. Like for me growing up, when it was me and my foster dad, it was kind of quiet. And I really didn't know that much about him, and I lived with him for 13 years, but I didn't know as much as I feel like a son and a father should know about each other. You know what I mean? And that's something that I wish I would have. And some of it may have been my fault also, because I sure didn't want to open up either. But I think that's important. I think it's important to do that. Another thing is understand the kids' culture. I'm half white and half black, and my foster parents were white. And I remember one time, and I was probably a junior in high school. I remember I had gotten in trouble at school, and at the time I wanted to grow my hair out. I've got curly. Some of my hair is curly, some of it's straight. It just goes everywhere. But at the time, I loved rap music, and a lot of my favorite rappers had afros and cornrows and all that stuff. And I remember I got in trouble at school one time, and I came home, and my punishment was my foster dad shaved my head, and it really lowered my self-esteem because I wanted to be like the African Americans and black rappers that I had seen. And to me, I didn't feel like there was anything wrong with that. There wasn't anything at school that said I couldn't do that. But it really, I know there's a lot of different cultures out there, and this is just coming from me. And now I'm going bald right now. I'm baldy. And I remember when I was first going bald, I felt like it was punishment from God because I had bald hair, and it really affected me quite a bit as an adult, if that makes any sense.
Well, it wouldn't from where I come from because it was, for me, hair was never much of an issue at all. I didn't get any choices. My mama cut my hair because, well, we were poor and I had zero options on the hair. It was decided for me, but I understand that now. And, one of our little guys, he's got just a glorious afro. I think we cut his hair at 2 years old. He's just about to turn 8. It's the only haircut he's ever had. And, it is. I mean, when he steps out of the swimming pool, his hair goes down almost to his butt. It's just an incredible little head full of hair. And he expressed some desire to change his hair some. He didn't want to cut it off, but he really wanted it to get it braided or something. So we've done cornrows a couple times. Right now he's rocking the box braids. But it's amazing how much that means to him. And
exactly.
Let's be real honest. He's lived in our house for all of his memorable life. He came to our place at 1. And so even though that's the culture he's grown up in, it doesn't mean it's the only culture he's aware of. And so we do try and keep with some of that. It's a family friend. We'll just call her that because we want to get into all the mechanics of who's who it is. He just calls her Nana because or Nana. We have a Nana in our house and a Nani, and I forget, I lose track of the vowels. But he's one of his friend's grandma, although he's not allowed to call her grandma because if you call her grandma, she'll body slam you, is what his friend told him. But she comes over every couple of weeks, and she'll braid his hair for us because these hands right here are way too big to be doing those little fine braids. And
yeah.
And so that's just part of the culture, though. His dad his biological father was black as well. And it's something that matters to him. And I don't get it. I don't understand it. The culture I grew up with was, hell, just grab a set of clippers, put it on a low setting, and then you're good to go for a couple of weeks. And I don't have to worry about mom cutting my hair on a regular basis and then dealing with whatever I end up looking like there. Because I ain't saying she did a bad job. I'm just saying as a kid, mom cut your hair. It's not going to be cool ever. Right.
And I understand that. And that's how it was. But I was 17, 18 years old at the time, whenever this occurred. And I where I grew up was predominantly mostly white people, and I was just trying to be different, I guess.
Well, yeah, a teenage kid trying to be different, right? It happens. That's always made me laugh. It's all the teenage kids that I've ever known are all busy trying to look different and be different, and they end up looking just like each other. But that's how they're going to be different, by being like every other teen kid they know. Well, what other lessons would you tell the foster parents? Because getting to know your kids is super important, because you don't know this human, and understanding their culture. Because if you don't understand where they come from, you ain't never going to understand who they are today. So, what's the next thing you would tell foster parents?
Another thing would be to understand some of the trauma that they've gone through. I remember when I was 5 years old, and I went to my foster parents' house, and it was the first night that I was there. My foster dad, he told me, he said, "Hey Darius, it's time to get ready for bed. Go brush your teeth and get ready to go to bed." Well, I went to the bathroom, and I sat there. I didn't know how to brush my teeth, but I didn't want to admit that. You know what I mean? I never had a toothbrush, anything like that. I didn't know how to brush my teeth. And I remember it turned into this big meltdown for me. And of course, my foster parents didn't know. They didn't know. They didn't have the paperwork that said he's never brushed their teeth. I was 5 years old. That should have been normal. But I didn't know how to do that. And it took about an hour and a half. I remember before I ended up admitting, hey, I don't know how to do this. You know what I mean? And it's there's things that the kids are going through that we don't know why they're going through it. We don't know. And I think that being patient, like my foster parents did for me, is very important. I think patience with the foster kid is so important. So important.
100%. That's the one of the most important lessons I've learned yet, is to learn how to be patient, especially when it's hard to do.
Exactly. It does get tough. It does get tough. And usually, and like I tell my wife this all the time. Whenever we started getting kids, a lot of the kids would act out towards her. And I'd have to tell my wife, I'd say, "Hey, babe," I said, it doesn't have anything to do with you. I said, it has to do with what happened before. Most of the kids, I know for a lot of them, they come from a single mother households. And, as a kid, you don't want your mom to be replaced, and for a long time, I saw my foster mother as someone that was going to replace my mom. And I would act out more towards her than I would my dad. And I think, and once my wife thought about it and understood it, she didn't feel like there was something wrong with her. You know what I mean?
Yes, my wife and I have had some very similar conversations about especially when it comes to young boys. Young boys act a certain way, and moms rarely understand some of that because they don't know just how crazy we are. And they married us, and I still carry a certain level of that crazy into today. But sometimes to sit down and some of the things that seem so very simple, just to look at my wife and say, "Hang on, baby, there's a reason he didn't do what you asked." He's like, "What? I told him exactly what I want to do." I said, "No, I know you told him, but you told him everything, and then you said his name at the end. And when you said his name, he looked up, and you were done talking, and you looked down, and he never heard a word you said." You didn't say his name first. You need to come over. Actually, my little one, one of the most valuable things I can say to him if I need him to listen is I say his name. I say, "Frankie." He'll kind of look up. I'll say, "Eyes. Give me eyes." And he'll come over and put his eyes on me. And once we lock eyes, I'll tell him exactly what I want him to hear. And then we'll move on. And I know he heard me then. But if not, Frankie has one of those brains that does not stop running. And so if I'm talking to him over here, telling him exactly what I want him to do, and he doesn't know that's what I'm doing, I'm sorry, but right now there's a ninja battle going on in his head. The Transformers have stopped by for lunch, and we may very well be thinking about which kart we're going to race in Mario Kart later on this afternoon, and that's where his brain's at. And if I can't break that first, he ain't going to hear a word I have to say. But to be able to explain that to her and say, "Hey, take some patience, take a moment, find your patience, deep breath." Realize that he's not trying to be disrespectful. This is not blatant, disrespect. This is an inability to hear until you have his attention.
Exactly. You got to get the attention first. I'm the same way still.
You and me
know,
both.
And one thing too, I remember I would see how some of the men in my mom's life from 0 to 4 would treat her, and I thought that's how it was. That's what I saw, so that's how I acted. And I feel like a lot of kids could relate to that also.
Oh yeah, just the other night we were sitting in here in the office. Might have been last night, and my wife said something. I didn't catch it, and she went outside. And my daughter, who apparently it had something to do with what she wanted to do, she looks at me. She goes, "Dad, are you going to go talk to Mom or what?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about, girl?" She's like, "She just asked you like 5 times to come outside and talk to her." I'm like, "Oh, she did." "Yes, she did, Dad." So I stand up and walk out front and said, "Hey, did you just ask me like 5 times to come outside and talk to you?" And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I didn't hear one of them." I'm just sitting out here by a teenage girl, because it had to do with what she wanted to go do, everything to do with that. But right. Even today, as a grown ass man, I still struggle with that. And so, learn how to either have that patience myself when my kids are in that headspace, or to help my wife understand just how little it has to do with who she is, and it has everything to do with what my mental capabilities in that moment are. And if I'm distracted, if I have something else going on, I just don't hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids
all have those moments. Want to encourage them and let them know they're not alone either. And I want to be someone that if they need somebody to talk to, they could give me a call, and my wife also, so we can just kind of support them that way also, because I know it gets stressful, and sometimes you need somebody just to talk to. And I'd like to be that for the foster parents.
Well, good deal, yeah, because that's something that does for sure get stressful in all of our lives. Because as you find yourself stepping out into a journey like this, if you don't already have a support group of people around you who can talk to this journey, you don't have anybody who knows how to help you. And man, it is a long, quiet road by yourself doing this stuff.
Yeah. So, and then after the kids make the backboards and everything, we'll post them online and kind of hopefully make it a Facebook community where the kids can get on there and see their backboard on get some recognition basically for their talents, because I feel like a lot of these kids, once you tell them to get creative, there's no telling where it can take them and what they can come up with.
Absolutely. So tell everybody again, what's the best way to find your group online? What's the name of your group on Facebook there?
My Facebook page is Out of the Woods, OOTW, OOTW at Facebook, or OOTW Creations at Facebook.com. Did I say that right, man? Is that it? Yeah, that's it. She's the one that does all the Facebook page. My wife does. So, but yeah, you'll see it. You'll see it on there. OOTW Creations at Facebook.com. All
right. Yeah, I'm sure we'll find that. Now there'll be a link in the show notes to that, so people can all find that real easy. Because I think that's super important for people to be able to find you. And is that the best way for people to get a hold of you as well, if they want to find out about what you're doing and whether or not, if they're in the area and they want to connect with one of your events?
Yes, sir. Yep. That's the way to go. Just email us and we'll get back to you. And we're fixing to start. I got my fingerprints done and everything, so I'm fixing to start going into the homes and really getting busy on making some of these backboards. So we'll have lots of content on there shortly. So
awesome.
All the stuff that's on there now is mainly what I've made, and I've got a couple on there that I've done with some of the kids. So.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. I just want to thank you for coming in here and telling your story to the nation, because as much as there is shame wrapped around it all in the background, we all know that telling that story and being vulnerable and reaching out to other people is the only way that we make this a better world.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And thank you for for allowing a podcast to be able to do that. I love your show. Listen to it every week, and I really appreciate it. Your show is actually kind of what got me to kind of be bold enough to share my story, hearing some of the people talk on your show, and I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad it's helped, because that's the whole reason we're doing this. Okay, Foster Care Nation, thank you for listening to Darius' story. Now take his knowledge and wisdom to heart so you can create love and healing in your family and community. Be sure to come back next week. We have new episodes every Tuesday. If you would like to share your story as a guest, you can reach us at fostercareuj@gmail.com. You can connect with other like-minded people on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/fostercareuj. Don't forget, we have a Patreon where you can support us at patreon.com for as little as $5 a month. It's patreon.com/fostercarenation. The links to everything in the show notes on your podcast player or at fostercarenation.com. And as always,
you are so super awesome. I think you guys are cool. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Thanks.
Unparalleled Studios.